Hello everybody and welcome to week 42's week in review here on my channel, teaching myself how to draw. Once again, we'll start with looking at these figures. Did I, is this a new brush? I can't remember if I used this brush the previous week. I'm using, which one is it? Where is it? It's this one. It's a pencil. It's kind of nice. I still need to adjust it a bit. It doesn't get small enough. Because I'd like to use this for line art. If I like turn this off, let's go like black. I really like this brush, so I've been using this lately. It's kind of nice. So I can't remember if that was a new thing this week or not, but who cares? So my figures they're still looking fine. I don't really have anything to say. I'm noticing I'm having a lot of trouble with foreshortening though lately, with the foreshortening of the body. I'm not sure if I can find a good example, like kind of something like this, where like the body is heading away or coming toward, and by body I mean like the torso and the pelvis, mainly the torso kind of thing. I know there's one that came up today, like this sort of thing, when it's like kind of leaning toward the camera, it winds up always becoming rather flat. I don't know how to like make that not look so flat. I don't know if this is an example of something coming toward the camera, kind of like this, you know? It's really hard for me to make something coming toward the camera like this. Limbs, I'm okay with limbs, because they're kind of cylinders, it's easier to envision that. But stuff like this, right? I find kind of difficult. How the pelvis here is like straight and then it's bending over. That stuff is hard. I realized today, and I think the previous day as well, I've been struggling with that. So I'm thinking I might do like a deep dive on foreshortening in general. This kind of thing. It doesn't look too bad, right? But sometimes I feel like I'm making the central, like the body part, the belly, a little too long. It's hard for me to gauge that. Like right here, it feels long, right? Really long. I've got like the torso here and then like the pelvis kind of here, and then there's this really long central area. Sometimes I accidentally do that when there's kind of a lean toward the camera going on, right? So I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind and then maybe work on foreshortening in particular at some point. This kind of thing, right? We're seeing like a lot of the top of this torso and like the shoulder, kind of this flat plane on the top. I feel like this might just be a little too long. I don't know. It's just something that's on my mind. Not really a whole lot else to say, right? And then here's today's. I did it in red. Day 300. Where's the one that... It was this one. He's kind of like leaning... Right? This looks really weirdly flat. Where he's like sitting in a chair and kind of coming toward the camera a little bit. It just doesn't, I couldn't really get it, you know? That sort of thing is really hard, I think. That's where I'm noticing like the most glaring confusion lately, is this kind of thing. Or like leaning toward the camera like the other examples I showed you. So that's kind of just what's on my mind there. Aside from that, honk. I practiced some more clothing. Thinking about, it's kind of like drapery, I guess. Last week I did a bit of this, and then I did a tiny bit more, I guess it was last Sunday, and then this Tuesday, I did just a little bit more, 2 days of this. I'm trying to think of how to treat clothing a little more naturally, in terms of like how it's kind of like thinking of the figure below, how it's sitting on top of the body, you know? Like, where it would be loose, kind of like following and then hanging down as the leg comes forward, perhaps, or like bending up a little bit, like following the form of the figure beneath. I never really took that too much into account. Like, I think this one looks good, but it's this sort of thing is like how it's hanging the bottom, or sorry, how it kind of hangs and then the bottom of the skirt is visible. I find that really difficult, like this sort of stuff. Not so much the top, but like when you're seeing the bit of the bottom, I find really tough. There's only a few examples of it here, but yeah, and then just a little bit more thinking about folds, like what's actually going on here, right? So like if I grab this, let me change the color. That's still hard to see. Let me go brighter. If I follow like the bottom edge, like what's actually going on here, right? And then it's probably going like that or something. And if you think about it, there's kind of like a cone that's created here with this little flap that's being grabbed. Things like that. You know, trying to think about what the fabric is actually doing, right? I don't think enough about that. I just kind of, usually what I did before I practiced this is I would just stick to the contour. And it wasn't really giving me enough of a natural, I wasn't understanding what the clothing was actually doing, right? Enough. Like I just randomly, this is kind of arbitrary, right? Like why is it folding like this? This is kind of what I used to do, especially on sleeves, you know? So I'm just trying to think a little bit more of what's actually going on with this fabric, you know? I think some of these were from reference, and some weren't. I can't remember which ones were. I think this was not, and maybe this was not, but I think the rest were from reference. I can't remember. Anyway, let me go back to the blue, because I like the blue. And we'll look at what I drew this week in terms of fan art. So I worked on some more HoloLive fan art, because that's all I do. So I started this one. It took me, I guess, how many days? 5 days to finish? And with this one, I had a bit of an idea, but as you can see this background, I kind of had the idea of like a staircase going up and then kind of coming up this way. And then like a window in the background, that was my idea. But as we move on, you'll notice that changes. And I think the big thing I learned with this one is to really be sure of kind of what I want to do before I move on. This was day 2. Kind of just cleaning things up, detailing it a little more. And then the background is coming. So now you can see kind of what I was thinking. And I like this background. I really like it. I think it's cool, but it didn't match the character well enough. Because she's kind of like a, you know, this looks like a library or something. Like it's more of like a regal kind of thing. So I did the color, and as soon as I did this, I was like, this is not, the background doesn't fit, right? It's too fancy, too nice looking. She's like going out on the town or something instead, right? So the next day I ended up changing it into like a night scene. I was thinking of kind of like coming out from not a sewer, what's the word? Subway. Like a subway exit? A sewer exit, yeah. And then I did this kind of simple, silhouetted night kind of downtown scene. And I thought it fit the character much more. But the only thing is like, I didn't have enough time to really do this, right? And so what I kind of did is I borrowed the staircase that I had here, and I set up like all the perspective and everything, the eye level, and then I kind of adjusted it. I brought the stairs down, right? And I didn't really adjust it from there. So I don't know if the perspective is still correct. And then here's the final day here. Just adding some effects and shadows and stuff, cleaning it up. I feel like some of it is a little overdone, but yeah, I don't know, it looks fine. So I think the key thing I learned with this one is to make sure I know what I'm doing kind of before I start. And also I really struggled with I think it was on this day. I was trying to figure out the perspective here, and I eventually, with some help from the chat, I was able to just simplify and do just 1 point perspective. But that didn't really give me like this sort of stuff. So all I did was I took these lines and I mirrored them, which I don't know. I don't know if that's correct, you know. So I'm going to practice perspective a little more as well. I think those are the two things that I struggled with this one, but I'm pretty happy with the result. I like the shadows. I think the shadows look pretty cool. So I'm getting like more confident in kind of making the shadows look nice. Not necessarily on the hair. The hair is still really hard, but stuff like this I think is pretty cool. So yeah, there you go. That's my week in review. Well, that looks weird. So yeah, I'll be back next week with another one. Hey. Until then, thanks for watching, everybody. Cut.